Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Debbie and I read a lot of books. Today is a Wednesday, so we just got a regular old book for you today rather than anything in a series. So today's book is Diary of a Somebody by Brian Bilston. Now, I am not on Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter for a very long time, so I didn't know who this person is. I have since done some research and found out that Brian Bilston is actually somebody else who I think some newspapers have actually said who he actually is, but I don't think it's my place per se on here, even though his real name is out there. But basically it's kind of a pseudonym, and the character of Brian Bilston is a character on Twitter and is known for writing poetry. So this is a fiction book based on what the real person's character does on Twitter. Does that make any sense? If you know about Brian Bilston, the pseudonym and the person behind it all, that'll probably make sense to you. But yeah, I'll read that blurb to you and then go into what I thought about this book. Every day for a year he will write a poem. It's quite simple. Brian's life certainly needs improving. His ex-wife has taken up with a new man, a motivational speaker and charity fundraiser to boot. He seems to constantly disappoint his long-suffering son, and at work he is drowning in a sea of spreadsheets and management jargon. So poetry will be his salvation. But there's an obstacle in the form of Toby Salt, his arch-nemesis at Poetry Club, and rival suitor to Liz, Brian's new poetic inspiration. When Toby goes missing, just after the announcement of the publication of his first collection, This Bridge No Hand Shall Cleave, Brian becomes the #1 suspect. If he is to regain his reputation and to have a chance of winning Liz, he must find out what has happened to Toby before it is too late. This was 320 pages in humorous and literary fiction, and this e-version was released June 2019. This book was interesting. Basically, it's all done from Brian's perspective in diary form. At the beginning of the book, you find out that Brian has decided he wants to write a poem every day for a year, and he uploads a lot of those poems onto Twitter, because he's also trying to build up his Twitter account and reputation. Throughout a lot of the book you see Brian counting the followers. Like he starts off with like 5 or 10, while his nemesis Toby Salt is going into the thousands, and it comes to a point where it just plateaus at about 20 people or something. And one of the people that's following him is Liz, who he goes to Poetry Club with. But yeah, so he's part of this poetry club, there's a group of them, and Toby Salt, the nemesis, Toby's poems just seem to go viral, and that's how he becomes a name in the Twitter world and in the poetry world. And so you see Brian getting really pissed off with Toby throughout the book, and the idea that Brian doesn't think Toby's poetry is very good. He thinks it's a load of nonsense. Whenever he reads anything that Toby has written, he's just like, what does this mean? And to be honest, going through, I actually liked Brian's poetry. Because it was just based on things that he was observing around him. And so there's certain poems throughout it that are like based on Star Wars, based on conversations he has with his family. You know, it's all just, you know, there's even a love poem that he writes which is a pun on like vegetables and stuff, and for him it's supposed to be quite serious, but when it's read out at Poetry Club everybody's like laughing and snickering, and it was just like, I still thought it was a cool poem. I'm not sure if that's the point. I preferred Brian's poetry to the poetry that Toby was writing throughout the book, but the big thing about Toby going missing and all of that, it felt like it came more than 3/4 of the way into the book. So it was kind of like the twist. So the fact that it's in the blurb is kind of annoying. Because through a lot of it, you're just looking at Brian and living in his own world and being incredibly naive. There are points where it's just like, is Brian incredibly stupid or incredibly smart? Because there are some things that happen throughout the book when you just like, he just seems like a lot of things go over his head. Like, he has a neighbour who I think hates him, even though he does end up spending Christmas with her at one point, who keeps inviting him to like seances and stuff, and there's a seance that they go to where it starts to spell out his name, it goes BRI, in the idea like that this death is coming to this person, and Brian just comes out going, I wonder what BRI was trying to spell out, and I was just there going, really? It's just one of those things when you're reading it, you're just like, is he naive or is he just too smart for his own good? And you look at that relationship with his ex-wife and his ex-wife's relationship with her new man, who just, I was annoyed with Brian at the new boyfriend, because he's one of those people that he seems kind of too good to be true. Every single time the new boyfriend turns up at Brian's house with his son, he's always like, big smile, like full of like these motivational speeches and stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I can understand how that would be too much and why Brian wants to slap him. Yeah, just seeing Brian going through with that poetry and openly admitting how much he doesn't like Toby. But yeah, when it comes to Toby going missing, Brian's diary that he had written throughout the book becomes evident, because he's never held back on how much he doesn't like Toby, and the whole thing when Toby goes missing and the police are using Brian's diary to find out what on earth has happened and what's going on. This was probably one of my favourite parts of the book, and I don't know why. The fact that the police keep calling up Brian in regards to his diary and his poetry. There's a point where the police call up and say, oh, by the way, that haiku that you wrote on this day actually had 8 syllables in the second line and not 7. And they keep calling him about his poems, and it's just like, obviously he's hit a nerve with them, because they just keep calling him. And I don't know why I found that so hilarious, that the police just keep calling him about his diary and saying like, oh, you used this word and I think you've used it in the wrong context, or talking to him about his poems and saying, oh, have you noticed that this poem that you've written, the first letter of each line spells out, I want to kill Toby or something, or Toby must die. It's just like, it's ridiculous, but it is so funny. Obviously, as somebody who's not on Twitter, I had no idea about this person or the pseudonym, just this character that this, hi baby, as the cat shows up. He's been very cuddly lately, which is nice. You can't even see him. Do you want to say hi, boy? You haven't said hi to the camera in a while. But yeah, so it becomes a bit of a mystery when Toby goes missing, but it did feel like it came quite... Yes. You okay? Is it because they've left? Means I can go downstairs and watch Baby Daddy on the big screen. Yeah? I'm binge watching Baby Daddy at the moment. Yeah, it's just the fact that it's obviously Brian, he wants to make it in poetry. He actually seems to quite like writing poetry, to the point where he actually creates a poetry shed in his back garden, based on something that Toby actually said, the idea that you need like this your own private haven to do it. And so Brian decides, oh, actually I'll create a poetry shed in the garden, have my own space, and then he realises that this shed is actually the source of him not being able to write. He chooses not to write in the shed at one point, because he realises that he just gets blocked. He just gets writer's block whenever he's in the shed. So this thing that he purposely built to write poems, he can't even write in, and then comes to a point where he refuses to write in it. It's just so ridiculous, but it's so funny. And yeah, as somebody who's hasn't been on Twitter in many years, I can't even remember what year I came off Twitter, because it just went, I was just permanently doom scrolling, and it wasn't good for me, and so I just came off. It is probably the best decision I ever made coming off Twitter. Every so often I did go into the thing of just like, oh, but you know, it would be nice to see like the people that, you know, the celebs that I like to follow and stuff, and then it got to the point that it was just like, yeah, but actually that would turn into a form of doom scrolling as well, when I realised what I thought I was missing, and it was just like, no. And now it's all gone to shit anyway, so I'm just glad I'm not on there. But yeah, I just thought this was brilliant and hilarious, and I loved the relationship between Brian and Liz and how that was coming out, because it was one of those things where it's just like, if they'd have like a coffee or they'd have a drink, and Liz would go, oh, do you want to come back to my place for a coffee? And instead of hearing that as do you want to continue the date, Brian would just go off on like a complete tangent about how coffee at night isn't good for you and the caffeine and stuff, and then while he's going off on one, Liz is just like, okay, bye, and she's just going to get on the bus. But this happens at like 3 different times throughout the book, where Liz tries to invite him back, and he just goes off on a tangent about something completely different, to the point when Liz is just like, oh my god, you idiot. I am asking you back to my place. This isn't a thing about coffee. But yeah, seeing that little love story, the rivalry between him and Toby, and yeah, Toby just came across as an arse. He's one of those characters that seem quite slappable. Am I weird in that where you get characters or people that you look at and you're just like, you've got a slappable face, or you've got a slappable voice. Or maybe I get it from my mother, because my mum can watch a TV show and go, okay, this person just needs to die now. Put them out of my misery. I get that personality trait from my mother, definitely. I thought this was funny. I liked the poems, and I felt like it was really easy to read. 320 pages, it's not like the longest book in the world, and actually because it was broken up by the poetry, it meant that it was very, very easy and quick to read, because there was also the fact that because it's done in diary form, there could be pages where you could have like 3 or 4 different diary entries, so it really broke it up and just made it easy to read. If you don't like poetry, this probably isn't a book for you. I wrote poetry a lot when I was a kid. I've still got folders on my computer of poetry I wrote when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. I don't really write poetry anymore, but actually this inspired me that maybe I do want to sit down and have a go at writing a poem again. Because I used to love writing poems when I was a kid and a teenager, so maybe this was the spark I needed to think about writing poems again. You never know. Yeah, it's Diary of a Somebody, Brian Bilston. Tagline is, it's January 1st and Brian Bilston is convinced that this year his New Year's resolution will change his life. And to be fair, it does. Yeah, that is the front cover of the book. I thought it was lovely, I thought it was funny. I love the relationship that Brian has with his son throughout it, and how they both look at the ex-wife's new boyfriend and are just like, really? Like rolling their eyes and just like, oh my God, this guy is just crazy. And just, yeah, and I loved all the poems, I thought they were funny. There were a couple that were just like, really? This seems a bit much. And then other ones that were just joyful. Diary of a Somebody, Brian Bilston. Anybody who enjoys the Brian Bilston poetry Twitter account will probably enjoy this book. And if you're just looking for something that's got a bit of a mystery, that's funny and easy to read and not too long, yeah. Diary of a Somebody, Brian Bilston. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time with another video. Stay safe, everybody. Love you. Hello. Oh, I just whacked myself in the face. Wow.